Hello and welcome to Alchemy 101, the show that explores all avenues of transformation and aims to offer some useful nuggets that can support us in living in line with nature in a way that's true to our nature, no matter how contrary that might seem, just like this nightingale, the bird that sings out in the dark. I'm JJ, the Practical Alchemist, and I'm delighted as ever that you've joined me today. Later, we'll hear one woman's extraordinary story of resilience and healing, but first, you might know that the June full moon that we've just seen is called a strawberry moon. But did you know it's also called a mead moon or a honey moon? Mead, of course, is a kind of alcoholic drink made from honey, and I don't know about you, but I felt June's moon to be particularly intoxicating. I wonder if the popularity of June weddings was the reason for the marriage connotation. I don't know, but another June honey caught my attention last month, and that's honeysuckle. I've always loved the scent of honeysuckle. It never fails to stop me in my tracks while I'm out walking. When I was younger, I only knew honeysuckle as a perfume for soap and the like, and I'd no idea that the flowers could be used as a flavouring for food, far less as a medicinal herb. And when I stumbled across a whole bank of honeysuckle on the edge of a wood, I knew I had to get closer and drink in everything the plant offers. Unfortunately, when I did manage to get back to the spot, the heavens had opened and the heavy rain didn't stop. So it wasn't quite the foraging trip I'd planned.
Well, I've just arrived at Bishop's Wood, which is a fantastic place. It's been described by the Forestry Commission as one of the best examples of natural birch woodland in the region of Fife in Scotland, and it's a rich habitat for flora and fauna. I've just arrived here and the heavens have opened, so I'm just sitting in my car hoping that the rain will just die down a little bit. Because one of the reasons why I've stopped off here is because it has the most amazing spread of wild honeysuckle I have ever seen in my life. And I want to just go and experience that and also talk a little bit about honeysuckle and some of the other plants that we can find right now in the hedgerows and woodlands of the UK that are good for us, that we can use for our health and well-being. So yeah, it's getting a little heavier again now, so I'm just gonna wait for that to subside. Well, the rain's eased off a little bit, not massively, but I think I'll brave it. We'll just see what we can see, and I think I'll just give up on foraging today because it's far too wet. And immediately as I get out of my car, I can see rosebay willow herb. And, you know, a lot of us think of that as just being a really invasive weed that you find on a lot of wasteland. But in Russia, they make tea out of the leaves, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm just going to walk around to where I think the honeysuckle will be. Certainly I can see it from the road. And yeah, lots of willow herb. The other thing that's around at the moment in a lot of the wet areas, a lot of the ditches, is meadowsweet. Now, meadowsweet, as some of you might know, was the original aspirin. And unlike aspirin, which is the chemical that's taken from meadowsweet, isolated from meadowsweet, meadowsweet, when you take it, doesn't hurt your stomach. Nature always knows best, doesn't it? Nature always has an answer. And the other thing that I'm seeing here is elderflower. Now, elderflower, of course, is very popular these days, and you know, often we'll have it in cordials, and and drinks and ice creams and sorbets and that sort of thing. And it's really worth doing some foraging for elderflower in season. But here's the thing about elderflower, and anything to do with elder actually, that you can only eat the berries and the flowers. You need to make sure that you cook them first, because there's a chemical in elder that is a sort of cyanide producing chemical. And if you eat raw berries or raw flowers, it can make you feel a bit sick, nauseous. And I have to tell you that I did that a couple of years ago before I understood just how mildly toxic elder is. And I ate some dried elderberries that I was going to be cooking to put into some kombucha that I made for myself, which is absolutely gorgeous. And I have to tell you, my stomach did not like it. I felt quite sick and my stomach felt quite upset for a good while. So just don't eat elderflower or elderberry raw. But I tell you, it's really good for you. It's good for colds and flu, bronchitis. It's good for a whole load of things. It's a diuretic. It can help you sweat, so it helps with fevers and that sort of thing. Helps with bronchitis, colds and flu, sinusitis, a whole raft of things that, are really good to stock up on herbally for the winter when you might be susceptible to these things. You can even use it as a gargle or a mouthwash, but remember to cook it first. And then you can also even use it on the skin for joint swelling and pains. So, and a lot of preparations for skin these days are using elderflower water, for instance, in skin lotions. You can make your own elderflower water by putting it on the stove with some water, boiling it up and making that tincture. So I'm just carrying on walking through the woods. These are gorgeous birch woods, I have to say. It's really beautiful here. And apparently these birch woods self-seeded in the 60s. After a great storm in the 60s, felled a whole load of pine trees here, or fir trees. And the birch came in and took over. Nature really is wonderful. It's a beautiful, beautiful grove. And here I am just coming up to some honeysuckle. It's not the great bank of it that I see from the road, but it is beautiful. A friend of mine who lives near here told me that it's all the way through these woods. And you can tell that these woods are fairly undisturbed because there is so much on the ground, so many ferns and bracken, and gorgeous, gorgeous wildlife. And it really is a beautiful haven for wildlife. Now, one thing that I read about with honeysuckle is that you can sip the nectar from the flowers. I never did that as a child. Or at least I don't really remember doing it. So I'm going to try some now. Oh, yeah. That is beautiful. So lovely. I'm just doing it again. Really gorgeous. So delicate and so wonderful. And it does have herbal uses. I didn't realize that until quite recently. It has a lot of herbal uses. You can use it for all kinds of things, like treating inflammation. It has a lot of the same properties actually as elder, in fact, but it also has antimicrobial properties. So it can help with a lot of things like, bacterial infections like cholera and TB and dysentery, which I hadn't realized. And, lots of different varieties can treat different things, apparently. So not just the wild honeysuckle that I'm looking at here. It's also known to be a laxative, it's known to be a diuretic, it's known to be an antioxidant, and it's like elder, it promotes sweating, diaphoretic, so it's really a useful herb. Not so much used apparently in Western herbal medicine, but used mostly in Chinese herbalism. Yeah, so you can also do things like gathering the flowers. I'm not going to do that today because it's too wet. It's always a good idea to forage when it's dry, and then you don't have things going off and getting all squishy and squidgy. Just looking over at one of these birch trees, and it has the most beautiful robe of honeysuckle climbing all the way up. Absolutely gorgeous. And I've just spotted some foxgloves over there. Now, foxgloves, of course, are poisonous, but they are used in herbal medicine. In fact, digitalis, which comes from the foxglove, is used in heart treatments, I believe. So somebody will correct me there if I'm wrong. But yeah, I'm just absolutely delighted by all this honeysuckle. It's just growing everywhere. Now, you know, some gardeners might not like it too much because it can be fairly invasive, and that is so much in evidence here because it is climbing up the trees everywhere. But yeah, honeysuckle, it's great for all kinds of conditions, and it's also great to eat. Have you ever thought about the taste of honeysuckle sorbet, for instance, a honeysuckle syrup? You can make those quite easily. Now, what I would suggest is that rather than using sugar to make a honeysuckle syrup, and you can find recipes online, it's not that hard. You just gather a whole bunch of flowers, boil them up in some water, and add the sugar, or I would suggest honey, and then you reduce it and make sure that you put it into a sterilized jar with a tight screw lid and keep it for through the winter, because honeysuckle's good for things like coughs and colds and flus. So what a fabulous way to treat a cough with maybe a cold than to have a spoonful of honeysuckle honey syrup. That, I think, would just be lovely. And I'm going to come back here when it's drier, and I'm going to collect some honeysuckle flowers, and I am going to do that very thing. Yeah, what a beautiful, beautiful place. I'm going to take some pictures and I'll put them on my website so that you can see where I am and what I've been looking at. Maybe take a little bit of video, and you can also enjoy this beautiful, beautiful woodland, which is just natural. These trees are so pretty as well. Just very elegant and abundant. And the feeling that you get just standing amongst them, even in the rain. Although I have to say that the tree canopy is keeping some of the rain off me right now, which is great. The feeling of just walking through these gorgeous trees, breathing deeply. It's such a good feeling. Some more foxgloves over here, another herb or flower that grows in woodland and grows in undisturbed woodland. Beautiful. I think this is going to be about it for now. There's a nesting box over there that somebody's put. I think this wood is managed by the Woodland Trust, so they are keeping an eye on what's going on here, and they do make sure that the flora and the fauna in this lovely piece of land is well looked after. So, I think it's starting to get a bit heavy again now, the rain. So I'm going to just sign off here now and just say, if you can find yourself in the woods and you see some honeysuckle, wild honeysuckle, gather some of the flowers. It's such a treat. Beautiful smell for a start. And what a treat that would be in the winter. And think about it, you could even make honeysuckle ice cream. Wouldn't that be great? I think I might have to, I don't have an ice cream maker, but if I did, I'd be making some of that. Anyway, that's all from Bishopswood from me for now.
I did get very wet, so we'll definitely have to go back when the weather's better. Do check out how to make honeysuckle syrup. You know, there are recipes online, and I've posted pictures and some more information on my blog, which you'll find at thepracticalalchemist.uk, so do go and check that out too. Right now, it's time for us to take a short break. We'll be back with an extraordinary healing story right after this from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Alchemy 101 here on UK Health Radio with me, JJ Stenhouse, and right now we go from practical alchemist to practical mystic, which is how my guest today, Angela Medway-Smith, is known. Angela's a spiritual channel, a psychic medium, a healer, an international best-selling author, mentor and teacher, whose business is called Cariad Spiritual. Cariad is Welsh for love or sweetheart. I expected to chat with her about her work, but as you'll find out, she had the most extraordinary healing story to share. We started off by Angela explaining how she works.
So I'm the practical mystic. I work with spirit. I work with Ascended Masters and the Archangelic Collective. And I do lots of different things. So I work with people on an individual level in different ways. I provide spiritual consultations. I provide healing sessions. I teach different healing modalities. So I teach spiritual healing. I teach angelic Reiki. I teach violet flame rescue healing and a number of other high vibrational energy healing modalities. And I write books.
You're a busy woman, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And my guides keep me busy.
So tell me a little bit more about that, because a lot of people are still skeptical about spirit and spirituality. And so, you know, how do you work with your guides? And secondly, how does that help other people that you might be working with one-on-one?
Okay. So over the years, I started on my spiritual journey almost 40 years ago now. And one of the first things I was taught by my wonderful teacher, a lady called Betty Bolcom, was to develop a relationship with the team of beings in spirit who want to support me. And so I did, and I've done that all the way through. The guides who've been working with me, apart from a couple, have changed over the years as my work has changed and has developed. And so basically, if I'm, I could be lying in bed as I was this morning and I was given some guidance. The showers are really one of their favourite places to talk to me because of water.
Water, exactly. Yeah. Get your best ideas in the bath and the shower.
Well, water's this incredible conductor of energy.
Yeah.
So, this is I've got used to it over the years. But when I work, so at the moment they give me big projects. And so either retreats or I channeled a healing modality a couple of years ago with specific instructions as to where to teach it, where to ground the energy for the first time, where to go to do various pieces of work that they want me to do, energetic pieces of work. But working with people on a one-to-one basis is incredibly powerful because in a spiritual session, I work psychically and mediumistically. So I actually don't need the cards or the dowsing or anything else because the whole time my guides, the individual's guides, are talking to me and passing on pieces of information. But the way I work is incredibly practical. I don't work as a fortune teller. I work looking for information to help people make the best choices in their life. So similarly, if I'm working in a healing session with somebody, my guides will come in and they will decide instruct me basically which healing modality to use for that particular person, which energetic frequency aligns with them, which what they need at that time, what their higher self has asked for. It's a whole kit and caboodle of things, and it might be 2 or 3 different modalities and quantum codes that I'm using. So it just depends what's needed.
And explain quantum codes for somebody who hasn't heard that term before.
Oh, okay. So oh gosh.
Put you on the spot now, haven't I?
Yeah. It's just to finding a simple explanation, really. So we are all connected energetically, and we have, as well as our energy field that people are comfortable with and has been popularized is the wrong word, but people know about the chakra system, they understand about the different layers of the auric field. But as well as all of this, there are divine codes that can move and shift things that might be stuck in these fields, things that might, they can be, it can be ancestral stuff, it can be past life stuff, it can be stuff from this life, it can be disease, disharmony in any part of the body system, including the energetic body. So the codes, for me, the ones that I work with on a primary basis are strings of numbers, and I started working with them several years ago. I found a surgeon in Germany who's also a Reiki master who downloaded a whole load of these codes. I started working with them myself, and now Spirit use me, and they give me bespoke codes for that particular person. So I might be finishing a healing session, and the last thing I will do then are embed strings of numerical codes within the auric field, before I finish my session with that person. People work with the quantum field in different ways.
Yeah.
And I work with it in another way as well. Another system that I teach, which is quantum metaphysics, that was channeled from the Archangel Melchizedek by a wonderful healer called Edwin Courtney. And so that came through Edwin, and I teach that these days as well.
Interesting. And so when you talk about quantum codes, it's what you might use, because as an energy worker, you would always make sure that things are sort of nicely sealed away, and sorted out before you actually leave the person that you're working with. So it's another way of doing that, really. It's
my last but one step. So I'll use the quantum codes, whichever ones I'm being given for that person. And then I will seal the energy in nice and beautifully. And
right. Yeah.
I tend to use colours and crystal, etheric crystal energy as well. So, and it just depends what the person needs. And then I will disconnect my energy. And that's a really important step for any energy healer. It's one of the things that I teach my students as vital. Yeah. You don't want to take on everybody else's energy, do you? No. And you're just leaving channels open, if you like, when it's unnecessary. You're working this way, but you've also got a book which I can see. Our listeners won't be able to see this, of course. Was it the Healer's Oracle behind you? So on 6/6, we launched the Energy Healer's Oracle, Tools for Total Transformation. This was I've published 7 books, but 3 of them I'm the main author, or my name is on the front cover of them, because I can't take credit for the Book of Many Colours or the Book of Many Flames, because they came from Saint Germain. My name is on the front of them because I'm the person that was chosen to package these for people, if you like. But the Energy Healers Oracle is another of his projects, and it's a collaboration of 20 master healers from around the planet, each of them talking either about a little bit about their journey in the modality that they work with or teach, and each of them giving a tool, a transformational tool that people can use to, change whatever it is they want to in their life, whatever's right for them at that moment in time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because everybody is different and everybody's going through different stages, and sometimes people can have an awful lot wrong with them, or they have a number of issues, but it's not the right time for them to resolve those issues. There's other stuff that maybe needs to come before, or whatever. So it's always what's right for them in that moment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure lots of healers will recognize the analogy that we use of as building up layers of dis-ease and disharmony like an onion that need to be shifted and moved. And sometimes this journey the healing journey is really fast. And for other people, it's a winding road with lots of trauma along the way as we shift this stuff. People may have a healing crisis, but everything happens for a reason. And yeah, I believe it's all part of the lessons that we're here to learn.
Yeah. Yes, it's pretty tough for somebody to accept that, though, isn't it? Unless you are going along the same spiritual path. To say to somebody that they might have something wrong with them because they have something to learn, people might go, well, that's not fair. That's, why do I have to go through this to learn a lesson? I don't know what that's all about. But everything that happens to us in life is teaching us something, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely everything. And on a soul level, they've chosen this experience, and sometimes, personally for me, I've had some horrendous things happen in my life, health challenges, multiple miscarriage, horrendous experiences. And it's like my grandmother used to say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
But it's actually sitting and reflecting and understanding, what does this teach? What has this taught me? Is the power behind all of these experiences.
Yeah. Yes, it is true. And, things like miscarriage, I've had that as well, experienced that as well. That's pretty rough. It's a rough thing to go through for a woman. And, you'd be forgiven for saying, why on earth has this happened to me now? And you're saying multiple miscarriages you went through.
Yeah. 6 babies.
Wow.
Yeah. But
how do you pick yourself up from that?
Oh, I didn't just pick myself up. I caused a bit of a stir, actually. Yeah. Our first son, Thomas, had anencephaly, a neural tube defect.
Right.
Basically, he had to be born early because his brain hadn't developed. And after a couple of months of hell and blaming myself, I actually got very angry because I was an intelligent woman. I should have known that taking folic acid could have potentially prevented this. So I then decided to campaign, and this is back in 1995 now, so quite a few years ago. But first of all, I campaigned locally. I got local obstetricians on my side and talked to Health Promotion Wales, talked to all of the charities involved in supporting people with neural tube defects. So, hydrocephalus and spina bifida and all of these things. And I found out that there were resources that were available free. Posters, leaflets, everything, but it wasn't on anybody's radar to do anything about this because the government had decided that it was, smoking was the agenda, weight loss was the agenda, as it has been for the last 25, 30 years. So instead, I did it myself. And so the local health board gave me the stickers with all of the pharmacies and the GP surgeries in half of Wales, basically, because I was living in Wales at the time. And from my kitchen table, literally my kitchen was full of boxes, and my husband and I stuffed envelopes, getting information into all of these places. I followed it up with radio broadcasts, with stuff into the local newspapers. And then I had a brainwave, and I think all of this is, for me, this is spirit-led. Because the brainwave was, I found out that the link between folates and neural tube defects had been established in 1963, and the year I was born, and so 30 years later, it still wasn't a priority for our government, but they promised to do something about it. So I got a local MP to ask I created some questions that made it a very embarrassing time for the government. And basically they then gave £3 million to an information campaign.
Wow.
In Northern Ireland and Wales and England, not Scotland, bizarrely enough. And,
we're losing to ourselves up here,
Yeah.
Terrible, isn't it?
Yeah. And then for the next 3 years, then I was involved in the professional dissemination campaign, working with Health Promotion Wales, which I did in my own time. It wasn't my work. So, and while this was all going on, then I got the hospitals to measure uptake. So they were doing questionnaires with ladies who were coming in who were pregnant to see whether or not they'd heard anything or seen anything in the media, had they taken folates, and measuring then how many babies were dying in the hospitals. And literally in my local area, the hospitals that I was able to measure, there were 6 babies a year less who were lost to neural tube defects than there was before the campaign. So if you multiply this by the number of hospitals in the country, multiply it by the number of years since this has happened, then, for me, my little baby Thomas's life was because of that happened to me, because that needed to be done.
Honestly, I did not expect our conversation to take that turn. All credit to Angela, because that is a tough hand to be dealt to anyone. Well, we'll hear more about her journey in a moment. First, though, it's time for another break to hear more from our sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Alchemy 101 here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio station. With me, JJ, the practical alchemist, and my guest today, Angela Medway-Smith. We've heard some of her story, and it's really not anything anyone would wish upon themselves. Here's Angela again.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Which is why, and then, so he was the first, and then eventually they found out that I've got lots of autoimmune issues, and it was an autoimmune issue that was causing the multiple miscarriage.
Yeah.
So, which wasn't fixed by allopathic medicine, it was fixed by Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you surprised me.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I've got 2 beautiful children. So,
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
so good. Oh, and also, I don't know how anybody sort of, goes through all of that and then carries on to have the two beautiful children. To me, I think I'd have thought, oh, for heaven's sake, it's all too much. But I suppose if it's for you,
yeah, yeah. And, and I always knew I would have two children,
right?
but even after they were born, I didn't think that they were mine until I got to take them home because,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
because they were early babies and I could, you don't want to hear about the problems I had with my babies even after they were born.
Mm,
Yeah, but when I got to take them home, then I was happy that
yeah.
they were mine. They weren't safe in my body, which was what I was feeling because of all of the
Because of all of the
trauma.
issues, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because of
Mm,
all of the trauma.
hmm. Yeah. And that must be an awful feeling for a mother to feel that. And, because the natural tendency is to know that you're keeping them safe in your body. Your body's a safe haven.
Mm.
It must have been a weird feeling to think they're not safe in me, and
Oh,
they need to be born early.
yes, not only born early, but so the syndrome I have is called anticardiolipid syndrome. So what would happen is that I might just, be pregnant and then you think you get past 12 weeks and then that's great, that's fine. And I go for scans and everything is fine. And then I go back for another scan, no baby, nothing.
How come?
Because my body had decided that the baby was an invader, had cut off the blood supply to the placenta and reabsorbed the fetus.
Wow.
So radiographers would go white when they saw me coming in, literally. And I mean, I changed a lot of things. So in the hospital as well, created protocols and training for them because I was concerned about them when I was lying there having this scan, thinking, oh God, how awful is this for them to deliver the news to me?
Mm, mm.
So it's, yeah.
Wow. And so in those, so I'm sorry, I this is a terrible thing for you to have to talk about, but I'm just so curious now. So the six miscarriages, were they actually miscarriages, or was it this that that your body just reabsorbed the fetus?
No. So two of them were born and buried.
Right.
Yeah. Um, one was, I'm trying to remember, it's such a long time ago, and it's not something
No, and it's not
so
something that you really want to go into
no,
often, is it?
no,
No.
no, but at least, so two of them were born and buried. One was a physical miscarriage,
Mm-hmm.
and that was because of a consultant giving me the wrong dose of something,
Mm.
which
Okay.
he admitted afterwards. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and three were reabsorbed.
Gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
That's extraordinary. But I bet you that there are women listening to this who can absolutely identify with what you're talking about here. And isn't it fantastic that you had this spiritual connection that has seen you through all of that? Because again, I mean, I can imagine that somebody who didn't have that connection to spirit or whatever you want to call it, they might have found it very difficult indeed to see their way through that.
Well, it's a good thing and a bad thing because when I was carrying my first child, I've been a reader, since the 80s. So I turned to the tarot, I turned to the oracle, I talked to my guides. And so when I was carrying my first child, I knew what was going to happen even before they told me what was going to happen. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but in my heart, I knew this baby wasn't going to go to full term. And so I put the cards away, and I didn't pick them up again until I was pregnant until I had my 8th pregnancy with my daughter. And I needed to know that she was going to be okay. I was worried. I didn't feel right. And I needed to know that she was okay. And the card I had was Strength. I don't know if you're familiar with the Rider-Waite deck. And
Yes.
it's this young woman who's grasping the jaws of a lion. And that is basically my daughter.
Mm.
She's a Tyrian, and she is incredible. She's an incredibly young woman.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. But you know, even, you know, I half a dozen times we've nearly lost her. But, you know, after she's born.
Mm.
So, you know, these are other challenges.
Mm.
No?
Yeah. Honestly, I can't thank you enough for sharing this with us today. And as I say, I'm sure that there are people in the audience listening who will relate totally to everything that you're talking about. And I don't know how common that syndrome is. I mean, is it very common, or?
I honestly don't know. It's a similar thing happens. Multiple miscarriage happens to women with lupus.
Yeah.
Because they thought I had lupus to begin with, until they identified, you know, they gave it a label, if you like.
Mm.
And what I disagree with strongly, and I understand there are limited resources, is that no investigations happen until you've lost 4 babies.
Oh gosh, really?
No. I don't know whether they've changed that, but certainly in my day,
Yeah.
you know, in my day, my kids, my children are 22 and 25 now. And so I'm going back 30 years.
Yeah.
So
things were very different in those days.
Yeah, they were, but I don't know whether the same thing happens. No. And they do nothing.
No.
They just, in fact, and you know, it was, oh, there, dear, you'll have another baby. You don't want another baby. You don't want another baby. You want that one. You know, that's the one you've created a relationship with. That's the child that you love. And I'm really lucky in a way, because they, not very often these days, but they have come back, and I've had messages through other people from my children as well. And one occasion, my cousin, she's an incredible medium. When my daughter was born, she was 7 weeks early, and she knew I was pregnant, and she had this, my grandmother came to her, and my grandmother was holding a baby, and she had 6 babies around her. But they were all, she said they were all at different ages. Mm. And my grandmother has said she's going to be fine. I'm getting a bit emotional now.
No, I know, of course you are.
Because at the time my daughter was in a coma. She didn't know she'd been born, and then she'd burst a lung, and she spent 2 days in a coma.
Oh.
So, but because I rang her when we got home, and she said, "Oh my God, this is, you know," because she called my grandmother my Auntie Mary, because he was her great aunt. So, you know, this is why I understand. This is one of the hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands of occasions that I've had confirmation of the spirit world. Not just confirmation. I mean, I talk to them all the time. So.
An affirmation.
Affirmation, yeah. But a beautiful one.
Yeah.
Yeah, an absolutely beautiful one.
Yeah. Oh, well, I am so pleased that you've come through all of that. And I am really thankful to you for sharing this story. It's not where I thought this interview was going to go at
No,
all.
no, no.
But again, it's obviously, it was meant somehow to be like
Yes.
this. And I think what you've talked about here is incredibly valuable for other people to hear, because I know from firsthand experience that when you have had a miscarriage, and I had one very early on, but I'd never really properly known that I was pregnant ever before. And in fact, I knew when I was very young that I would never have children. I just knew it, intuited it. And it was a bit of a shock when I realized that I had actually had a miscarriage. But then, yeah, everybody's saying, "Oh, don't worry, you'll have another one." I just think, what kind of crass thing is that to say to anybody?
It's the worst thing. And
It is, isn't it?
people think they can make you feel better by handing you their babies to hold.
Oh, yeah.
And oh my God, it's like ripping your heart out.
It is. Yeah. Yes. And I remember a lunch with a friend, and it was a girly lunch, and all the other women there had children at school, and all they could talk about was their children and what they were doing with them. And then one of them turned to me and said, "Do you have any children?" I don't think I was very civil at the time. I think I gave her a pretty gruff response. And I had to explain to my friend who's hosting the lunch that these things hurt, and being in that environment was not comfortable for me.
No, no.
I mean, I'm fine now, but
yeah. But then when they complain about their babies not sleeping, and they're complaining,
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole other thing, but and some babies don't sleep as much as you'd hope that they would.
No,
and I can understand mothers being very, very tired as a result of that, or parents generally being very tired as a result of that. But yeah. Oh no, so I'm really grateful to you, Angela, for sharing this. What I want to ask you now is where we've got books that people can read, which might help them in their journey and their healing journey. And you've got the Natural Healers Oracle, which is out, and you've got a website as well, haven't you? So if anybody wants to reach out to you, work with you, where do they get in touch with you?
So my website is Cariad, which is Welsh for sweetheart or love. Spiritual.com. So cariadspiritual.com. And so the Energy Healers Oracle is a really good starting point for people if they don't know about energy healing, if they want to understand what it's all about, because we've got a little introduction and then we've got 20 different modalities. But my other books are about the sacred rays and the divine rays and the sacred flames. And again, I'm really practical. So these are books that you can pick up if you know absolutely nothing and you want to understand, what are these all about? How can I use them? How can I use them for myself? How can I use them for other people? How can I use them to learn about healing? So the Book of Many Colours shows you how you can work out what your destiny ray is, so that you can understand what you're doing here. And mine's interesting because I was born on the 33rd ray, which is overseen by Archangel Michael. And it's about the energy of a spiritual warrior.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And so that is the essence of the energy that my incarnating soul decided to ride down on in this incarnation. And And I've also got an oracle deck as well, an accidental oracle deck. Just happened overnight by accident.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, as the practical alchemist, obviously, I'm very much in favour of anything practical that will help us heal and help us transform our lives into something which is much more powerful, enjoyable, successful, not necessarily in the monetary sense, like everybody thinks when they're climbing the ladder in corporate terms, but living the life that we want and that we deserve. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I wish you and your family all the best, and I'm sure that a lot of people in the audience will have found this very powerful and hopefully very useful as well to hear.
Thanks so much, JJ. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, what a story. Hats off to Angela for getting through her challenges. I always say the best healers are the people who have been through the mill and come out of it so much wiser and so much stronger. And with that, we've come to the end of the show. I hope some of the information we've discussed here might help you. Remember, you can listen to all of our shows on all the main podcast platforms these days. And if you like what you hear, or if they've helped you, do help us spread the word by sharing them. Thank you for listening today. Do head over to my website. Again, it's thepracticalalchemist.uk to find out more about me and how to stay in touch. And then join me for more alchemy here on UK Health Radio and the UK Health Radio podcast next time. Until then, it's goodbye from me and that nightingale.